We had our friends Dylan Easley and Garrett Grover join us with Reuben as well to talk about preparing for this year's competitive shooting season. We talked about reloading pistol ammunition and actually making it work perfectly with your particular pistol and even your particular sighting system. We also talked about physical fitness and mental preparedness before getting into the season and the thick of things. So check this one out and let us know what you think, as usual, in the comments below. Thanks, everybody. All right, everybody, welcome. We got a full house here. Across the table from Mark and myself is Reuben, Alexson. We have Dr. Dylan Easley and Mr. Garrett Grover. And if you haven't actually checked out the last podcast that Dylan and Garrett were on, it is in our top 10 bolt guns versus gas guns at long range. I don't know if you guys knew that.
I did not.
Top
I did
10
not
material.
know that. Wow, that's
big
awesome.
Time, you guys. So
I mean, you guys have done what, 11 podcasts now?
Yeah.
I didn't know they gave ribbons for 10th place. Just kidding. No, it's actually really, it's amazing because we've done how many? More than 100?
Definitely more
North
than that.
North of 100.
That's awesome.
So
that's really cool.
Definitely over top 10%. So, anyway, with this one, we wanted to discuss any smattering of things related to preparing for competition season because you guys shoot competitively. And man, kicking it off, I know one of the things that Reuben was telling me, Dylan, you in particular do a lot of, and a lot of people that listen are interested in is reloading. And we've talked primarily in the tenses of reloading, I think more for the precision long-range stuff. Now, I know you do some PRS too, right?
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit. So, but you reload a lot of just like 5.56, right, for your AR and 3-gun, and I think you do tactical games too. Are you reloading for that as well?
Did that one. The schedule this year doesn't work out too well for tactical games,
okay.
Just because of where the events are placed, but mostly for 3-gun and then practice, and then also probably going to be a little bit for PRS.
Yeah. Now, explain reloading for 5.56. I know sometimes people do it just to do it in bulk, to get a lot of it, hopefully save a little bit of money for the amount that they're loading up. I know you also, from what I've heard, go a little bit further, and you start, your rifle is pretty raced out, whatever, and you start reloading almost to your muzzle brake or to other stuff, or,
well,
I don't know. How does that work out?
I know Garrett and I do it a little bit different when it comes to reloading for 223. He's going to reload a little bit of 55 grain. I reload 0. I just, for what I can buy bulk 55 grain for, it's not worth the time to me.
Okay.
Now, long-range ammo, I can run a Hornady 73 grain ELD bullet and then load it into cases that I've gone through and prepped during the off-season. Build up a 5-gallon bucket full of it and then have it all there. I can load that at enough cost savings that it's worthwhile. And then I can load it for my gun, my barrel, and then I can even adjust that load throughout the year.
Okay.
So at the beginning of this year, I'm going to have about 500 rounds of it loaded up. After the first few matches, I'm not going to go through and just continue loading it unless the standard deviation, the velocity, and the accuracy are still maintained for it. I can go through and bump that powder charge if I need to. I can drop it down as the barrel kind of settles in.
Got it.
Now, for 9mm, it's a little different. It's all about volume. How much can I shoot for the dollar amount I'm willing to spend?
Yeah.
And so I'll run an automated press. I'm running Hornady hat bullets in there. And when running those, feeds through nice, everything else, but I'm running a more expensive bullet, but I'm able to shoot a lot more than if I were just to go buy that level of accuracy, if you will.
Okay, so that was my mistake. I thought that you were loading for the 223 stuff, but this you're doing more the bulk stuff. You're doing more in the 9mm area.
Yeah, the 9mm I'm doing a lot
the
of
precision, reloading and whatnot for the long range stuff.
Well, and you mentioned a more expensive bullet there. So, what are you getting performance wise out of that more expensive bullet versus maybe another one that'd be commonly used?
So, a little difference between the 223 and the 9. So, for the 9, the reason why I like that is it's a brass enclosed base, so it's jacketed hollow point. It's going to be constructed similar to what you would see like a match tip for a rifle.
Okay.
So if I'm running my pistol comped, I'm not going to lead that comp up and build up things that have to be cleaned out of it.
Okay.
I can go shoot 8,000, 10,000 rounds, look at it and go, it's good. Wipe it a little bit with a cloth, and I'm fine.
So not necessarily like an accuracy thing, but more of like a functionality thing of the firearm itself?
It's inherently going to be more accurate because I'm building it for that gun.
Okay.
But I can go through and
right.
run several different types of bullets and eventually find a load for all of them that's going to be acceptable.
Okay.
But I can take that one, not build up lead in the comp. It can be more consistent, which is going to lead to more accuracy. And then I'm also going to use a powder that a lot of places may not go with. I've used a powder like N320 in the past or CFE that are maybe a little more expensive. And depending upon which purpose I'm looking for, iron sights or for comped, I'm going to run a faster or slower powder that's going to either give me more gas or maybe more of a slow push for an iron sight barrel.
I have the thought process of like the rifle reloading versus pistol reloading of like if I'm going to reload for pistol, I am reloading, and I do quite a bit, and typically somewhere around 30,000 rounds a year that I will run through my presses.
That's several to many.
I've done more.
Yes.
But it's a good number, right? And it's
pretty good, right?
it's pretty good, right? I'm reloading pistol because a lot of the time you can't necessarily buy that load.
Yeah.
Unless you're having like like Atlanta Arms or something load it for you. So I'm loading for the performance aspect, which is usually slower velocity, powders that are cleaner, and to shoot the bullet that you want to shoot. Whereas with rifle,
this isn't like, because for those listening and they're hearing slower velocity, that's almost like, why the heck would you ever want to go for that? But
That's
we're talking about
counterintuitive.
competition, pistol. You're not trying to put a threat down. You're trying to put holes in cardboard usually, or
that, and you got to knock steel down or whatever it may be. The bullet I'm using is actually because Reuben and I had a conversation about what bullet weight are you going to run, what bullet's going to be the best one for your pistol and all of that. And it was my first venture into shooting open. Well, I'm like, well, I just run the same stuff, right? Well, not if you want it to really work well. And so a different goal in that aspect. So if I'm shooting USPSA, I have to make major power factor if I'm shooting open. Otherwise, you get dinged on points. On 3-gun, I don't have to make a power factor, but if there's a piece of steel out there and I don't knock it over, depending upon the match rules, they may walk over with their pistol and shoot it. It falls over. I have to eat that penalty. So I want it to be hot enough to make sure it does all of that, but I also don't want to go through and run some hot defense-type ammo that's going to have more recoil than what I want to deal with.
Right.
yeah,
Just
more
kind of
to
finding
control.
that balance
Yeah.
then. Huh?
Yeah.
and that hat bullet too, that myself, you, Travis, a lot of guys here, Adam, Kellen, we're all shooting in the 2011 platform is a 356 diameter bullet instead of a 325 or 355. So it's just ever so slightly larger diameter, creates a little bit better seal in the barrel. Typically, when we're running like a higher quality gun, the barrel diameter tolerances are kept a little tighter. So running a bullet that creates a better seal allows more of that gas that's following the bullet out to either actuate a comp. Well, really, that's the main thing is you want enough gas behind that to actuate the comp so that your barrel stays flat. You don't have a lot of muzzle rise.
You actually need, how do you know when you're actuating a comp? Usually I see most people do, they just stick a comp on their gun and just start shooting, and they just assume it's working.
The pressures that...
At least that's what I do. I just throw it on there and assume it works.
There's definitely some difference between major and minor when you're trying to achieve that. So the thing that I'm looking for if I'm going to do a minor load, it might be anywhere from 145 power factor to 155. And
Can you explain power factor? I'm sorry to interrupt.
so power
What is
factor
that?
kind of from the USPSA guys, take the bullet weight times the velocity and you get a number. Divide it by 1,000. So if I have, to make things simple, if I were using a 40 caliber and I had a 165 grain bullet going 1,000 feet per second, that's a power factor of 165 because it'd be 165,000 divided by 1,000.
Okay, yeah.
From there, I can go through and say, okay, major power factor is 165 and above. For my open gun, when I run it in USPSA, I've got a big 3-port comp to work more gas because I'm going to push it even harder. On that one, I'm running like 172, 175. I'm well over that. But that's what works the comp well enough to where that dot sits, fires, and sits right back where it was.
Yeah.
So it's not like I pull the trigger, the dot disappears, I find it again. No, I want it right back where it was. I want the gun to sit almost still, if possible. On the minor side, I have a barrel with a little half-inch single-port comp on the end. And so with minor, I don't have to push nearly as hard. 135, it sits perfectly still. Boom, done.
Oh, okay.
Can you go over like even major versus minor and where that comes into play?
So for USPSA and any of them that are going to do what's called a hit factor scoring, you're going to have your points per second is how it breaks down. So if you have your scoring zones on a paper target, you have Alpha, Charlie, and Delta now, which they've got rid of the B zone. You're going to have a certain number of points per zone, and then depending upon your power factor, if you don't hit the A in the middle, Charlie may go down, was it 1 point or 3 points? 1 point or, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
then you
one
go
for
to a
major,
Delta.
3 for minor.
Okay.
Yeah, so you go to a Delta, and all of a sudden you're going like, okay, if you're shooting major, it hurts a little on the points. But if you're shooting minor, you might as well have missed. You get like 1 point
Because
instead of 5.
when you're shooting minor, in theory, you're shooting a gun that's not as bucky.
Correct.
So they say, like, well, if you shot out to Delta, then it's really on you. It's not necessarily because you're shooting this powerful recoiling.
and
Okay.
When I took
pistol.
a couple of pistol classes, the guys I took them from were former Army Marksmanship Unit, and we're going through, they're trying to change the training over to help me for 3-gun, but they're going through, and every time you shoot a Delta, you go through and be like, oh, you got an Alpha and a lucky miss. And they pound it into your head that, hey, that was lucky. You missed the target.
Yeah.
So now if I'm shooting steel, most of the time I'm shooting an AC zone steel. The D zone is literally cut off the target.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
want to train on any target that has
Gotcha.
a D zone attached, because if I get used to accepting that as being a hit, it's not acceptable. Because if I can bring that accuracy in, then I go to a match where that's hanging out there, I can be lucky all day long. That would have been a miss on my range.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good tip.
Yeah, that is. Now, so comps on pistols, how does that work? Is it the same exact way that a regular rifle comp works? And
Similar.
how are you tuning your load to it?
It's kind of the same thing with the dot movement, but I can go through and change the powder. Sometimes a faster burning powder, sometimes a slower. I went from N320, which is a very expensive powder to run, and I was using heavier bullets. Well, there's not a lot of gas. It's quick burning powder, the bullet's gone, and very little gas comes out the end of the muzzle.
Okay.
I switch over to CFE and then a lighter bullet, and with that, all of a sudden now I have a slower burning powder, still relatively fast compared to a rifle powder, but it's slow enough that I'm building velocity the full length of the barrel, and at the end I've got a lot of gas pushing through the comp. And if you take any slow-mo video of it, you're going to see gas physically working.
Gotcha.
Interesting.
So like in I guess the original example, you're not, I guess, fully, did you say actuating the comp, or
Depending upon if you've got something that's not bringing enough gas, the comp's just an accessory sitting there.
gotcha.
It's really pretty. It looks nice.
They do look cool.
Oh yeah, I mean, a lot of guys love them on
There's
the Gucci
a-
box, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of conversation in the concealed carry world and just the regular everyday plinker world about should you even put a comp on like your Glock 17 or your Glock 19, and the kind of the reality is I think is that a lot of NATO ammo is pretty hot.
Yeah.
If you shoot like 124 grain white box NATO spec ammo that these guys are running, it's really hot stuff. It's like probably 155 to 165 power factor.
Okay.
Versus probably about a 145 power factor, 140 power factor when you go and buy a box of, off the shelf American Eagle.
Yeah.
And
And you
that-
would think that then, I guess intuitively, or maybe it's not, I don't know. I'm thinking, oh, hotter. Yeah, I should put a comp on there. But it sounds like it actually isn't really even utilizing the comp because it's
can be.
burning.
Can be, yeah.
Okay.
It can be, yeah. So you'll see all kinds of guys saying like, "Oh, I shot a comp and it doesn't even work." Well, like it's doing something. Like you might just not be able to notice it.
right.
But I think that when you are tuning your load and using the right powders and the right bullet, then you can actually, a lot of it's trial and error, right? You load a bunch at this powder charge, a bunch at this powder charge, go out to the range and see which one feels like your sights are lifting the least or the dots staying flatter on the target. You really start to, you're able to pick which load is best too.
What kind of, not to make this a comp podcast, but what kind of, I guess, like length are you adding or not adding to the pistol? Like,
Well, it
let's
depends
say
upon
a
your
guy
purpose.
goes, oh, I want to have my optimal concealed carry, and I want to make sure that I'm putting rounds on target when I need to. If the situation arises, I'm going to put a comp on my pistol, or maybe they shouldn't because of that. I don't know.
Well, for concealed carry, I mean, I'm not going to throw on a 2.5, 3 inch comp for concealed carry. I mean, at that point, the gun's getting so ungangly, you're going like, you might as well just carry a 2011 open gun. You know, so it also depends upon what you're going to be pushing as far as ammo, because like my particular gun has the capability that I can go through and put in an iron sight barrel and shoot that with no comp at all, whether I've got a dot on or I've got iron sights. I can throw on a single port comp that works well with minor ammo. I can put on a large 3-port comp, and that 3-port comp will not run with minor ammo. It's not meant for it. It was never intended, so you have to run something hotter just to get the gun to function.
I think it's important, too, to note that if we were talking about USPSA open guns specifically, you're required to shoot major. Like, you're going to want to shoot major to be competitive. So because of that, you're going to have to meet that major power factor number. So the comp is not something that's required, but it helps you.
Yeah.
It's helping you deliver those points per second.
That gun would be brutal without a comp.
Right.
Shooting major with either 9 or 38 Super.
Right. Yeah, plus P.
Yeah.
Mark, I watched you with a Glock 19. You handled it pretty well, unbraked.
Yeah, but maybe better with a comp. That was my question.
I don't know. I think you're just fine, personally.
Thanks, Jim.
Don't sell yourself short.
You like me the way I am.
Don't sell yourself
that feels
short.
Good.
You were saying even you change stuff up when you're using a red dot or you're using iron sights?
Yeah, because I want a different recoil profile, if that makes sense. And then also if you go through and you take the weight of the gun. So I typically carry a Glock each day. And when I carry a Glock, I'm going to go through its polymer frame. It's lighter weight. I carry 147 grain ammo that's in it. I want it to be a soft push when I'm shooting it. And I can shoot it very comfortably. I go over to my 2011, and it's a steel grip, steel frame, steel slide. It's a heavy gun. It's 50 ounces in comparison.
Oh,
that
sure.
gives you an idea.
I think I think Dave's mountain rifle is about 50 ounces.
Yes. With scope and suppressor and
maybe a little
bipod.
bit under that, actually.
Yeah. That's
There are legitimately probably rifles out there that weigh less than my pistol.
no. I was being serious.
Yeah. Oh, no, I would imagine some of the ones I've seen here.
Right.
The one thing that I've noticed has been that I can go through and run a lighter weight bullet with the 2011 and get a better feel out of it. And then if I'm going to run a comp, I can run an even lighter weight bullet than that if I want. The weight of the gun is going to allow me to have a little more freedom as far as what I'm going to use as projectiles for the feel that I want.
Yeah.
And when he says feel, like a lighter bullet is going to accelerate faster.
Okay.
So that's where you get that snappy feel. So you shoot 95s or 115s or 124s, you're going to be more on the snappy feel if you're right, because that bullet's accelerating faster. Shooting 147s, 135s, 165s, 155s, you're going to get a slower push because the bullet is physically accelerating slower.
Okay. Where does the irons and the red dot thing come into play?
I want more of a push with irons, and then I'd like a little bit more of a snap with a red dot.
Really?
But what I've also noticed is that grip strength will come into play, and then gun weight. So I'm actually running pretty much all 115 grain bullets now. And if I'm shooting all minor, I'll run the same load because that gun weighs 50 ounces. I put it in my Glock, and it's awful. It's absolutely horrible. I hate shooting it.
Can you go into the why as far as I guess kind of the different maybe sight pictures that you're looking for with irons versus a red dot, and kind of where that snappiness comes into play?
You have a couple of things. You have what you're focusing on. So if I were shooting a target on this wall and I'm shooting with irons, depending upon how precise I want to be, I have to focus a certain amount on the front sight. If I'm focusing at this wall and I'm shooting a red dot, I focus on the target and the red dot's there. And the guys who usually have an issue shooting a red dot on a pistol, and we were playing at the range yesterday, and there's a bunch of Gen 5 Glocks, and they've got Venoms and Vipers on them. Like, okay, are you coming up and then trying to find the dot? If you close your eyes and bring it up, it's there.
Right.
Quit thinking about the dot. Quit looking for the dot.
The more you stare at the dot,
stare at the target.
the slower you get, actually.
Exactly. So that comes into play in that, because if I have to find that front sight and focus on it, I have to find it again in recoil. So the 2011s that I run have either been an island barrel or a sight block barrel. When I pull the trigger, the rear of the slide moves, but that front sight stays at the end of the barrel.
Oh, yeah. Those are pretty fancy.
I can try to keep my eye on it as much as possible if I have to focus on that sight.
And even shooting, like I shot production for a long time where you're trying to still maintain minimum power factor, which is 125. So you're loading like 135s or 147s, and you're loading them pretty soft, but they're still, it's a heavy bullet going slower, so you're getting that softer recoil feel, but you're still getting that power factor that you need. You want that slide to just really like cycle nice and slow so that you can pick up your front sight every time, versus shooting a dot. You don't want the dot to go away. So you want the gun to get through its recoil cycle quicker so that you don't have to reacquire that dot every time.
Like your perception is almost like that it stayed put.
Yep. And so one of the reasons why you would go and put a dot, is it, they call it like a Roland special? Is that what the Glock 19
I think
with
it's Ronin special is? Yeah, it's like a Glock 19 with a comp. And
it's a Texas Weapons specialties comp on it. I think I might have quoted that wrong, and then a red dot on it. So it's like overall it's about the length of a Glock 34, but it's a Glock 19 with a comp. And so one of the reasons why you would throw a comp on that setup is because you're going to run hotter defense ammo, and the Surefire X300, which is what some dudes started running overseas, and it worked really well. And that's kind of like a fad now in the pistol shooting world.
Okay.
Specifically kind of defensive pistol shooting world. So kind of like we were saying, a lot of times red dots on pistols historically have been in a competition setting where they're running a hotter ammo and they're able to get that dot back on target real quick. Well, now you throw that dot on a Glock because it's a superior sighting system to irons in a lot of cases in terms of precision and speed. Now you have this Glock that's got that slower cycling, quicker cycling, but you're running kind of the wrong ammo through it in the same, like the way that a dot was intended to be used in the competition setting, typically on like a fixed mount on a 2011 or a 1911, and now you're kind of putting all this stuff together on a gun that it was never intended to be used on. That's why guys are putting comps on that to keep that sight, because the sight is on the slide, right?
Right.
So you're losing that dot every time, and it's different than what a lot of guys are used to.
Is the sight on the slide in your 2011 that you're talking about, or is it on a fixed mount above the slide?
Yeah, so the barrels on my 2011 are monolithic. It's a single barrel, either comp, sight block, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And the front sight's going to stay out there no matter what. And one of the things, kind of like Reuben touched on, with the difficulty with some people shooting, maybe a Glock that they've thrown a dot on. If we think about how a dot is, most of the micro dots are going to be on there fairly small, and they're going to have a hood on top, and it's going to have a certain thickness. If you could imagine that as that gun lifts, that dot's going to disappear behind the top of that hood. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, in iron sights, it doesn't disappear. The front sight lifts and the front sight comes back.
Yeah.
Well, the dot disappears, then you hope the dot reappears, right? Well, if you were able to go through and put a comp on there, that dot no longer lifts out of the window. So if you're able to keep your eyes on that dot, things change pretty dramatically versus like I can watch the front sight lift, the front sight drops back down.
Okay.
Game on. I'm still there.
This is all stuff that, like, I mean, you talk about athletes and they see the game slower. You talk about experienced shooters and they just see the process of a shot happening way slower. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to pretend to be the most avid, or I guess, or what is it, pro shooter here. And so when I go and I shoot, usually it's kind of, all right, got the sight on the target, boom, stuff happens, and then you're just back to it's once you actually start being able to break down the entire shot after you pull the trigger.
Scott and I were talking one time about that, and we were talking about suppressors in particular. And one of the reasons I love shooting with suppressors is because, especially for new shooters, you're taking them through this process that's fairly foreign, right? And a lot of times we're demoing optics, so we're showing them the optics capability and how it works on specific platforms. And so I kind of liken it to you're explaining to someone how to do something, and then an explosion goes off immediately after they do it. And so I think the use of suppressors and shooting, that's probably one reason why a lot of people start shooting 22s or fairly low noise, low recoil rounds.
Totally.
It allows you to kind of see the process without like trying something you've never done before and being expected to pay attention while there's a bomb going off in front of you.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that I think is one of those things that over time you kind of start to, I'll always double plug when I'm shooting in a match, like shoved in as far as they can go so I can't hear people talking, and then muffs on the outside so that I can't hear anything. and then the noise of the gun is mitigated too. But like I'm watching, you start out and you're watching the shots, and then all of a sudden, a couple years later, you're watching your charging handle reciprocate while you're shooting, and it's like it's happening in slow motion.
Yeah, that's
wild.
Yeah.
That's when you know you've hit the next level of shooting.
So we've been
Jerry
talking about
Mitchell
reloading.
actually hears the primer pop, and then the powder start to fizzle.
I'm pretty sure with those glasses, he actually sees into the future and knows what's going to happen before it happens.
That's what those are for.
Jerry Mitchell, what you don't realize is that when Jerry Mitchell is shooting, you're actually seeing the past. And while he's shooting, he can leave his gun floating there and go around and mess with you while you're standing there still in slow-mo.
No, the point I was going to make is with Reuben talking about how things kind of go in slow motion, and you too, is when we're reloading. So I don't shoot dots, so I'm kind of quiet. I shoot iron sights. Every once in a while, I'll shoot a dot just to play around and slum it a little bit. But I prefer to shoot irons. It's just what I like. It's what what I've came up through the ranks on. But so when I'm working up a pistol load, I will load up. Here's probably what I think might cycle the gun. And then I'll work up 0.2 of a grain all the way up until my max powder charge. So I might have 10 little bags or 15 little bags with 20 rounds each in them, all labeled. And I go to the range and I actually watch what my front sight is doing from shot to shot.
Yeah.
So I can find the ammo that groups the best, the combination of the best grouping ammo and the most manageable recoil. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. And as we noted in previous podcasts, a grain is not the same as a kernel. So you're not moving up 0.2 of a kernel. That would be impressive.
Yeah, that would be impressive.
Also,
Ian
extremely
does that.
tedious.
Yes.
Ian does that, but that's okay because Ian.
He's Ian.
He's on a whole nother world of brain power.
I know when Jim and I were reloading,
Ian's
it was like it was
impressive.
in slow motion.
Mostly because it was really slow.
It was slow, and I kept thinking, God, is it over yet? It was an entirely awesome, cool process.
I think it's something that if you really feel as though you're into shooting and you want to shoot a lot, it's something you should try.
I think
Oh
there's
my
Even
gosh,
if you do
yes.
it on, you go over to
Absolutely.
somebody who has the equipment and you can just try it with them and then shoot some of the loads that you made. It's something you should try because it just opens your eyes that much more to what's happening. When you pull
It
the
really
trigger,
does.
You
It
know?
really does. I know just going through that process as an exercise and chatting with guys like you, like throughout that process and even like what we're talking about right now, like I said, my understanding, like you actually understand what's
You're
going
so
on.
much more conscious of what's going. It's like when you change your own oil. Sorry to bring up the car reference, but it's like when you change your own oil. You're like, oh my gosh,
it's exactly like
that's how that works.
Well, and not only that, but you kind of take pride in it too.
Yeah.
You feel good. You're like, I manufactured this ammunition myself.
Yeah.
At my home, and it shoots
Don't
better
feel
than
that.
what I can buy.
I don't feel that pride when I get a squib, but
Yeah, well,
that's a little gut wrenching.
yeah.
One thing I do feel about the rifle versus pistol reloading, something that I've done about 10 years, and I'm by no means am I an expert on it. I know enough to be dangerous. I know enough to not blow myself up. So two different things.
At least thus
Fingers
far.
crossed.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Got all the
All
fingers and
10 of
toes.
them crossed.
All 9 of them crossed.
There are
The,
30 fingers across the table from us.
The pistol reloading to me, now rifle reloading is you see results. You can see a group tighten up. You can see the rifle shoots more accurately or whatever. You don't feel a whole lot of difference, at least in my opinion, unless you're loading like some softer rounds for a low recoil purpose of low recoil. Pistol is something that you start playing with powder charges to figure out what is going to be the best for your gun. And like Garrett said, I'll go to the range with 10 different bags of ammo. One of them is just like amazing to shoot. And like you feel the difference. It's like softer, the recoil impulse is better. Your sights come back to where they should be. Where the other one is just like, oh, I don't want that one. Like that's out. And so you see this big difference, right? And it's really easy to see compared to shooting rifle where it's like it's basically an accuracy test.
Admittedly, this is kind of surprising for me to hear because I always almost just kind of looked at pistol ammo similar to how I used to look at shotgun ammo, where I was like, well, as long as you get the numbers right, it's all basically the same stuff.
Yeah.
And then now hearing it, but it makes so much sense because we've done now a little training with pistols, and you see how everything with pistols is smaller. And when I'm saying that, obviously the firearm in comparison to a rifle, most rifles, is smaller. But every little motion that you do, every little tweak you have to make, and every little thing you have to do to make it work well is smaller. At least it feels smaller. And so these small changes to the ammo, it makes sense. I mean, it's something that you're holding out here. It doesn't brace up against your shoulder, none of the other stuff. So these small differences.
You've got less points of contact with a pistol, first off.
Yeah.
It's literally hand in hand, and it's out here. You're not going to set it against your shoulder or put your face on the slide or anything like that. So it's inherently going to be different than a long gun. The other thing that I kind of notice is, let's say if I'm going to load CFE or whatever powder, I'm going to start at 5 grains, I'm going to go to 6.5. That's a 1.5 grain difference, and in there I'm doing 0.2. And I'm really glad to hear you guys both use the little baggies, because I feel like a drug dealer every time I go to the public range, pay my $3 and sit down and start pulling out dime bags, each one of them with a little bit of ammo in it.
But do you bring any ammo with you?
Oh, no. Yeah. But then I set the chrono up, everything else, and people are looking
all
at
of a sudden,
number one.
these kids start gathering around with their money, and
but none of these people, half of them don't know what a chronograph is, and you have to explain it to them like this records the velocity as I shoot through it, and then they want to know why, because a lot of people who reload will go reload because it functions the gun and it's fun to shoot. That's great. Now, if I'm playing multiple games, I have to know what that makes on the chronograph. Mm-hmm. And I may have a goal. It has to be above this. And I've done the same thing Reuben's done, where you've got 10 baggies sitting across there. These over here won't even cycle the gun. These over here feel horrible. And in the middle are the ones that are acceptable, but that one feels perfect. That's the one that's going to be run through the gun.
And those are the ones that are for sale?
Not without that special license.
I asked Mark to get the chronograph out of my truck one time, and he came back and said he couldn't find the chronic.
Yeah.
Right. And you just said for his gun, chances are if I then took your best thing and threw it in my gun, it may not work that way.
It may even be in the same gun. So I may hand you my gun and you shoot it and you're like, it's okay.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, just because maybe I hold it different. Or
you hold it a little bit
build.
different, you grip strength differences, everything else. If you take somebody who goes through and grew up on a farm hauling hay, everything else, and they, feel like they have to crush the grip on their pistol, then that gun shoots dramatically different for them.
Yeah,
Take somebody else who goes through and they grew up in suburban area and they played football in high school and did other things and they didn't maybe get over the top in that area. No, that doesn't feel the same for them.
Yeah.
Because I've had people hand me their pistol and go like, this one shoots great. And I'm going, it's okay. Mm-hmm. Then I hand them my gun that I think feels amazing. And they're going like, well, the trigger's okay. And you're like, well, what's wrong with it? Well, it kicks too much.
Well, that's where like just the small differences small things can make big differences. Because does that same thing happen in rifles? Where you hand maybe you get your rifle shooting amazing, and you hand it to somebody else, they're like, meh.
Yeah, because I know Garrett and I have had a conversation about this recently. He gets behind my rifle when he came out and he shot it, and he's like, that thing didn't move.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of the idea. Well, I went back from using titanium and lightweight carriers and went to a full-weight bolt carrier. But everything's tuned to have that full-weight. Yeah, exactly. It's the complete opposite of what you should do in 3-gun. Everything should be super light inside, super light everything. I wanted a heavier rifle. I wanted a full-weight bolt carrier, full-weight buffer system, full-weight spring, and I'm going to tune it for that. When you shoot it, it doesn't move. And now his gun cycles faster.
Did.
So
I used to always build out, traditional guns, full mass carrier, heavy buffer, all that stuff. And then I really got serious in a 3-gun and started going with reduced power buffer springs and the low mass carriers. And I wanted the gun to cycle fast. I was having a problem with outrunning my gun. I could pull the trigger a little bit faster than the gun.
I was going to say, so you want it cycling fast, so you've got another cartridge
so that I
ready
don't
to go
end
as
up,
fast.
So that I don't end up with a dead trigger in the middle of a paper array.
Okay.
That's fair.
So then a couple of weeks ago, I shot Dylan's rifle, and I really liked the way it handled. So I went out and took 2 buffer systems, a full mass or a full power, and then a reduced power, and then a full mass carrier and a reduced mass carrier. And I sat there on the bench and shot both back to back over and over and over again. And right now in my gun is my full mass carrier with my full power buffer system.
Interesting.
It just
wow, what a circle of life.
Right, and I didn't notice any change in accuracy because they have the same bolts in them. But I did notice that when I was shooting, especially slow fire, shooting groups, they were grouping the same, but the gun would jump off target. At 50 yards, the gun would jump off of my point of aim with my low mass carrier about 2 to 3 inches. I'd have a little But with the full mass, it was about an inch, and it would just settle right back down. I did notice I could feel the gun cycling a little slower, but I don't think it's going to be enough. And if it really is a problem, I'll just open my gas up a little bit, and
Okay.
And I'll
which it is kind of for what we've typically done is heresy, because when the bay stages and the bay matches were the big thing, I wanted the shortest, lightest rifle possible, cycle that thing as fast as possible. It was all about splits and transitions and movement and everything else. Now, Garrett and I
Just
shoot
being
a lot of
sewing
matches.
machine.
Yeah, you just want to just see a rainbow of brass flying out of it.
That sounds
Garrett
beautiful.
It is actually very beautiful when you get it done right. When it doesn't go right, you're no, and you're pulling on the charging handle trying to figure out what went wrong. But Garrett and I shoot a lot in Midwest down through Texas. So if you go through in the matches in Missouri and Texas and there, it's a lot of long range. So my reasoning for putting the full weight carrier in, and Reuben knows Matt, and Matt went through some testing and some issues where he had a super light buffer system, and all of a sudden his nice tight grouping barrel just started opening up to 2 and 3 inch groups. So I'm like, okay, my rifle that I built for this year, I went over the top in regards to accuracy. That's my only concern. I can make the gun work otherwise. I can use a good comp. I can work around that, but it will be the most accurate gun that I ever shot. I mean, if I'm putting the 1 to 10 on it, everything else going through all of that, it will be as accurate as I can get. So at that point, if his research went through super lightweight was opening up erratically, and so velocities were changing and accuracy was opening up, okay, well, I'm going to go the opposite. Full weight everything. And then it's literally the best shooting 223 I've ever shot. And so I can deal with the other things being a little slower on the cycle and everything else, because typically, and like Garrett and I talked about this on the way up here, cycling in a match versus cycling in practice are different. I can outrun my Benelli, I can outrun my AR, and I've never managed to outrun my pistol, but I can physically run it fast enough to cause a malfunction. In a match, I've never had it happen, because if I'm shooting that fast in a match, I'm racking up penalties, and I'm going to lose.
And you don't win matches because your splits on paper are fast. No. You win matches because you didn't waste 90 seconds on 2 long-range targets.
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting.
So it's kind of that the old juice versus the squeeze. Is it worth it?
Okay, yeah.
And for me, the accuracy was worth it.
Yeah.
Now, Reuben picks up my rifle yesterday and he goes, this is way too heavy. I'm like, no, that's exactly what I wanted. Like, that's the profile I wanted.
Yeah, but I'm heavier, so I need the rifle to be lighter.
It's a balancing act.
Is there like an overall combined weight?
Yeah, you step on a scale before
penalty
you get on the stage.
Okay.
Reuben, I'm not
right
really
at that line.
I'm not really buying that though, because we haven't talked about this in a while. But Reuben's actually lifted me into the air from just a standing, like static position. So I don't think you really need like additional arm strength to hold up the rifle.
Reuben's also deceivingly fast.
Oh yeah,
I'm quick. I'm not fast.
We buzzed all his hair off, so he's more streamlined now.
Yeah, exactly.
like a swimmer.
It is.
I've been called that before.
Okay,
Garrett, Dylan was saying.
we'll take this offline.
I don't know what's wrong with that.
In other news,
Grew up in the land of lakes.
Dylan was saying you reload some of your ammo for your rifle.
Right.
Rube, do you do that too? You reload 223?
The only
Trying to think who in front of me here reloads 223, because I'm in
Yeah,
the
I
same
mean, I
boat
do.
as Dylan. What you were saying earlier, where I'm kind of thinking to myself, that's a lot of 223 to load.
Juice versus the squeeze, for me, 55 grain, it's not worth it.
I mean, I have everything to do it.
Yeah.
I've loaded tens of thousands of rounds of 223. Right now, we're at a point where there isn't a huge rush on ammo, but when I started competitive shooting, I would literally have to count my ammo to see if I had enough ammo to shoot the match. And it was not because I was in college and didn't have any money. It was because there was a period of time from 2008 on where
funny.
if I could find 40 rounds of 223 at my local sporting goods retailer, I get to shoot the match this Saturday.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so now looking at like, okay, most people don't pick up their brass, so I can go to that same club where I shoot and pick up a bunch of brass. I can buy a bunch of projectiles, powder, put it together, because there's a much smaller subset of people that reload. And so the rush on ammo really affected anybody who didn't reload. The rush on reloading components took a little longer for that to happen, because even during that period of time, a lot of people picked up reloading because they couldn't get ammo. So
That's how we got started in it.
Is that why you do it, Garrett?
Yeah.
I do it because it's less expensive, especially, if you get in with some companies. You know some people. You can get your components maybe for a little bit cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
I also teach a lot of rifle classes, and my students never want their brass, so I get to take that home. So that helps.
Sure.
A lot. Heck, they
That's
even pick
fair.
it up for me, which is awesome.
No, they clean the range.
To clean the range, yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Do they tumble it for you too?
No. No, and I always tell them, I'm like, here's
Now
all
for
these
this part
buckets
of the class.
No,
Yeah.
I always, every student, I'm like, here's all this brass. If you guys want it, take it. And I've had people take the entire 5-gallon bucket, and that's great. But when they don't, I take it home. That helps a lot. I've got my reloading set up pretty efficient, so I can load rifle pretty quick. For me, I've heard a lot about, like Reuben said, you don't notice the performance as much, but I have messed around with powder charges and bullet weights, and I can get some 223 that feels like a 22, and I can hose paper a little faster. Now, like you said, you're not going to win a match on your split times by any means, but if I can make up a half a second per stage, on a paper array, over the course of 8 stages, that makes it 4 seconds.
There is something to be said too about the actual time it takes to reload, because like 9mm, I can take my brass.
Yeah,
I've even had a point where I don't even clean it. Like, I can run a couple of firings between full deep clean of the brass. Wow. I'll throw it in the tumbler for an hour, but like I don't have to do a full cycle, or I don't have to do stainless steel tumbling. With pistol, deep prime size, throw some powder in it, throw a bullet in it, good to go.
Yeah, straight wall case.
It takes even on a like a Dillon 550, which you have to manually put the bullet in and the new case in, and cycle it to the next station all manually. I can still reload 500 rounds an hour with virtually zero brass prep. So that rounds per time, I guess your cost and your time currency is really low on 9mm for me, or for pistol for me. 223, depending on where you get your brass and what kind of brass it is, if it's mil-spec crimped, now you have to swage that brass. Okay, so if you want to spend a lot of money and get a 1050 that has a swaging die in it, you can do that. But typically, you're going to go through all your brass. You've got to make sure that with rifle brass, it's really important to make sure the brass isn't stretching out and the neck isn't getting too long. So depending on how many firings it has on it, you may have to swage it. You may have to size and deprime, and go back, measure your case over or your case length, run it on a case trimmer, chamfer, deburr, then you can reload it. So reloading rifle, I find that it's incredibly time consuming, and I'm not gonna lie, like my time is worth money too. You have kids, family, yard work, housework, work, and it's like I don't find that right now with the price that I can buy 223 at. Yeah, I don't find that it's worth my time right now.
And 223, you're trying to load up a lot. Yeah, the guy who's going hunting, trying to reload his hunting ammo.
Yeah.
Needs to load up enough to get zeroed in, sighted in, shoot a few times at the range, and then go on the hunt, right? Not nearly 500 rounds.
Well, and kind of like piggyback on what he's saying, I can go through, grab my 1050, turn it on, and it's doing swaging, everything else. So even if my 9mm brass rolls through and I happen to get that one rare piece of brass that's 9mm that happens to be a crimped primer, which for the guy on a 550 is going to go through and be trying to get that out and then trying to slam that CCI primer in or whatever, and it's not going well, looks horrible, needs to throw the whole thing away. My 1050 will do that for me, but it's done, it's there, it's finished. Mm-hmm. For 223 for me, because I'm not loading 55 grain, because again, for me, it's not worth it at this time. And I have a bunch of 40, 50, 55s, and 62 grains that I loaded, and load data on all of it in case necessity requires it in the future.
Right.
But for the 73 grain loads that I'm going to go through and do, I can go through and buy the boxed ammo, and it's $1.25 a round, but it's really, really, really good. Okay, but I can load that same thing for less than half. And the downturn to that, or downside, is I have to put a lot of time into it. So when Reuben talked about sizing, depriming, and all that, I do that on a single stage. Then it goes over to a single kind of, I guess, a stage press that deprime or swages it. So I'm going to swage that primer pocket. Then I'm going to take it over and I'm going to clean it. And when I get done cleaning it, I'm going to take it to another tool that's like a pencil sharpener. It takes like, how long does it take to get a Gerard? Like 8 months?
Yeah.
It's crazy
so
amount of time.
Gerard that goes on the full Gerard or
the full one.
drill?
Yeah, I've got the full one that I bought back in like 2013
Yeah,
or 14.
it was almost a year.
It was pure necessity at the time because I was doing them by hand. So I'm either going to blister my hands up turning this little tool that's 2-3 inches long.
Yeah.
To chamfer on one side, deburr on the other, set it down, grab another piece of brass. Horrible.
Yeah, and this Gerard will literally trim to length,
Yep.
chamfer, deburr, all like
Pencil sharpener.
done.
That sounds efficient.
And so
It's way better.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're talking a $500 desk ornament that takes up, 16, 18 inches by 10 inches by 10 inches of your desk that you're only using when you prep 223. So
Oh, interesting. So that one's it's like cartridge
you
specific.
have to go
this
through and
stuff
get
is-
the replacement piece for it that's set to the shoulder.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I can't trim any of that until I've sized and deprimed it.
yeah, so you have to go first through, do all those steps,
Yeah.
then trim to length, and and
And then
chamfer,
finally I
deburr.
can take it home.
But it's so important in rifle because you're shooting a cartridge that's running at 50 to 65,000 psi of chamber pressure, right?
Okay.
Versus a pistol, which is significantly lower. So if my rifle head spacing is set wrong because or if my overall length is wrong because I decided not to trim my cases to length, or if you have too much neck tension or not enough neck tension, like you could blow up a gun. We've seen it on ranges where something was wrong with a reloaded case and a gun literally blows up. So to me, I look at the rifle reloading side of things as like, yeah, if I have the time and it's a necessity, I'm going to do it. But for like factoring all costs, it's really hard to justify reloading 55 grain kind of close range, sub 200 yard ammo.
I mean, even
Right.
at the point where if I had the money to where I could shoot all of the factory 73 grain ammo that I get my hands on, I'm not loading any of it. If I can afford that. But the amount that I want to shoot necessitates that I reload.
Yeah.
It's kind of like with pistol ammo. If I could go through and be like, all right, I've got $10,000 cash. I'm going to buy this much pistol ammo, this much 55 grain, and this much 73 grain. And I'm going to sit it there on a pallet at the house. I'm just going to grab a case when I go to the range. Great. That's awesome. But the reality is you don't have that much cash sitting there. So you're going to go through and you're going to buy this component here. And like I think it was November, I got in 3 little boxes. They're 8, 10 inches tall total. I don't know how big are the Hornady hat boxes, like 12 inches by 14 inches,
Yeah,
2 inches tall each. They're tiny. They don't look like anything. And I look like the biggest wimp in the world because I'm almost about to lose the dolly going down the stairs because it's that heavy. But you take the bullets in, you set them on the counter, all 3 boxes. You're like, okay, I've got that.
Yeah.
Now it's time to go and wait a little while, and I'm going to buy primers. Okay, well, I'm going to buy 15,000 primers. Okay, figure out, make that order. Then I'm going to go through and I'm going to order the powder, and then I've got all that sitting there, and then now I can feed the press. And so it's just a little bit different. The budget necessitates things.
Sure.
Costing on pistol too is really attractive. Reloading pistol, the cost versus your cost on reloading rifle, I think when you factor everything in it's pretty cool. Like you can, depending on when you buy your bullets or where you're, if you pick up your primers and you don't have to pay hazmat fee to ship them, whatever. Typically a primer is going to be 3 cents, right? They're typically around $30 a thousand. So
And if you don't order enough of them, you pay a $30 hazmat
yeah,
fee.
so it bumps it up. But primers are going to be 3 cents, right?
Okay.
If you buy a pounded tight group, there's 7,000 grains of powder in a pound. So you got 7,000 divided by one of the powder charges I use is 3.2. So 7,000 divided by 3.2. I can get a lot of rounds. It's like 1,400 to 1,500 rounds a pound.
Wow.
Okay,
If you buy an 8-pound jug, you got a lot of ammo.
that $21 bottle of tight group and 1,000 primers. Okay, now we're up to $30. You're around $50 in materials, and now factor in a 7 to 10 cent bullet. Okay, so I'm reloading boxes of ammo. If I'm picking up my brass and keeping my brass, I can reload a box of ammo that the cheapest ammo you're buying at a sporting goods retailer for 9mm, 50 round box for $10, 11, $12.
Okay.
I'm reloading a round that is catered and built for my pistol, for my type of shooting, that has a better recoil impulse than factory ammo for less than half the cost of factory ammo.
That's impressive.
So take it to the next step. If you go even beyond that, let's say if I'm going to work a comp. Tight group, maybe 3.2 grains. I think one of my powder charges for CFE was like
major?
5.7 for minor, and like 7 grains for major.
Major, yeah.
So if I'm going to go through and load those two, I'm still at, let's say instead of 10 cents, I'm at 15. But in order to get that ammo from a company, number one, they may or may not make major in my gun if I'm shooting major.
Yeah, you might not even be able to get the ammo.
Yeah, and then I've actually talked to a couple of different companies that, they go through and say, well, you don't have an ammo sponsor. I'm like, no, I don't. It's, okay, cool. Well, what do you think about doing this? I'm like, well, can you load this? And like, well, I'm like, okay, well, this is what I'm loading. I'm like, and it works great. And if I'm working a comp, you can't go through and run 125 power factor, 115 grain bullets and then expect it to work a comp in either a single port or a 3-port, minor or major. And so you go through and like, well, I'm not physically able to use it.
A lot of ammo companies are, even the custom reloading shops are going to be, they're going to be a little bit leery of exceeding SAMI pressures and SAMI dimensions.
Well,
right?
probably rightfully so.
Yeah, for very good
legal reasons, right? So, but now, and even like dimensional stuff, like loading a long round, so the bullet's seated out farther. Well, now that's not a SAMI approved length, right? Because it's not 9mm.
For those maybe not familiar, SAMI.
Oh, I don't know the acronym,
Yeah,
but it's
like
our in the U.S. It's the governing body that determines case dimensions, cartridge dimensions, and acceptable pressures, so that firearm manufacturers know what pressures to build guns to. Right.
That sounds about right.
So if a cartridge is not SAMI approved or doesn't have a SAMI spec, that's a Wildcat cartridge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and if you look a lot of times, you'll see 9mm and then you'll see plus P.
Yeah.
This is higher pressure than SAMI, more than likely. This is on the high end, or plus P plus, maybe we are definitely over that. Then if you go through and you start looking at firearms, you're like, okay, well, can I shoot that in that gun? You start opening the manual, is absolutely not. So I have several Glocks. Like everybody has a pillowcase of Glocks, right, that shoots competition. We all started with them, and we carry them and everything else. So I've got Glock 43s that are kind of like the super subcompact, something like that.
Is that
It's a single stack.
Yeah, so it's meant to be small carry gun.
It's like a 26 single stack.
Yeah.
Cut is 26
and then
and a half.
I got 19s and I've got 17s, and I take the 19s and 17s. I can shoot plus P in them. Mm-hmm. I shot 400 or 500 rounds of plus P through a Glock 43, which, by the way, is not a fun experience. But by the time I was done, it wasn't firing. So I happen to know a guy who's a Glock rep, and I said, hey, what's going on with this? Do I need to return it? Do I need to do this? And he's like, no. You're shooting plus P. Quit doing that. You're not supposed to in that gun. I'm going to send you this part, this part, this part, this part. Swap them out. It'll be fine. And he was 100% correct. I took the gun out, shot it. Shoots great. Shoots great now.
So you said, what should I do? And he just said, stop it.
Yeah, he said, quit doing what you're doing. Yeah, it's kind of that thing like,
breaking it.
You remember the instructions
idiot,
that we
stop.
send with the gun? And I go, yeah. And he goes, it's kind of like the instructions when you assemble something at home that your wife says, read the instructions first, and you don't, and you break something. Same thing, dummy. And so he helped me out, got me all fixed back up and everything else, and the gun runs great, and I carry it today. But I can't shoot plus P in that, which is a much more enjoyable experience not shooting plus P in that gun, because it is
But
tiny,
if you were
light,
carrying,
Sounds
nice
like
to have
all
a little
sorts
bit
of
more
pluses.
oomph.
Yeah, it's got a little oomph to it.
Interesting.
You know when you've pulled the trigger, we'll put it that way.
Right. I can imagine with something that small. So the season's coming up now, and because at the time of this recording, I think about the time that it's going to come out, we're almost in spring. It's almost here. And what else are you guys doing other than, there's the reloading aspect of it, but any other big things that you guys are doing as we get into it?
So for me, one thing I'll do every season is rebarrel my rifle.
You rebarrel your rifle every season?
Every season.
Okay.
I rebarrel. That's hard for me to say for some reason. My rifle. It's just a thing that I do. I want to make sure I tackle every season with a fresh barrel. And then I'm going to go out and break it in, group it, find ammo that it likes, especially for long range. For close range ammo, I'm not super picky. I just load my own. I load whatever I've got. But for long range ammo, I'm going to either load something or find something, a factory ammo that works well. Mm-hmm. I'm going to group it. I'm going to chrono it. I'm going to confirm it. I'm going to have probably 1,000 rounds on that barrel before I shoot my first match. And so that's something every year that I do is I rebarrel my rifle.
Yeah, if you get 1,000 rounds in your barrel before you even shoot the first match, I could see why you may need to rebarrel at the end of the season.
Right, and then I'll go through and I'll usually make kind of a checklist of all the issues I had in last year, and not just with equipment, but with myself, training issues, maybe a lot of mistakes that I made consistently throughout the year, and I'm going to practice that stuff in the off season. So last year I was having, I was fumbling some quad loads there for a while. So I've been practicing that quite a bit. Towards the end of the year, my pistol shooting got a little sloppy, so I've been shooting, 500 to 1,000 rounds a week the last couple of weeks. Just trying to get up to speed and get ready for the season, and then evaluate all my equipment. Obviously, buy some new stuff. Dylan and I built new guns for the Vortex Extreme this year.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we're going to train with those all year. So.
Got 5 cases of ammo incoming, a bunch of 140 grain ELDs to run through them.
Yep.
65 Creedmoor then?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sweet.
So that's most of my preseason prep is, evaluating myself and my weaknesses and trying to correct those, and then also my equipment. But the rebarrel, I can't say that word. Putting a new barrel in my rifle.
There you go. Syllables are really hard for Garrett.
I don't know why that word is kicking my butt today.
Modern problems require modern solutions. Find a new word.
Put new barrel in gun.
So putting a new barrel in my rifle is something that I always do.
All right.
And then everything else is situational dependent, depending on how my season went last year, especially towards the end of the season.
Yeah. I got to imagine you're keeping a list of stuff you screwed up. I don't.
It's long.
Sometimes
I need a whole notebook.
It's not any different than you with the car stuff. I mean, you go out, you come back from a trip, and you automatically have this list of things you need to change.
What kind of sucks to make those lists, but it's good for you.
Depends upon how OCD you are.
Yeah,
I'm probably the rare one that will sit down, and so most of us know Jake Latola and the spreadsheets, everything else. He's actually made fun of me because I'll make a spreadsheet with a ruler and a piece of paper. Apparently, it's a spreadsheet if you do it on a computer. But I will go through and make that list if I'm working on something or if I'm getting ready to take a trip, whatever it may be. And then as that list comes through, that's my checklist to check things off as to what I'm taking or doing or prepping, what I'm going to be checking, trying, testing, whatever it is. So I'll do that for if I'm going to, like Garrett talked about, reloading or factory ammo when testing that barrel and getting things ready. I'm going to go through and have that list and go, okay, every line item is going to be filled out for each one. Then from that, I can pick what I want.
You make your own.
My own spreadsheet with a pen and a ruler. So
despite the fact that they
just print off Excel.
Sell those at
what's that?
Just go
graph
to
paper.
No,
things that already exist.
It's quite literally usually either a piece of paper or I'll go to Microsoft Paint and make the columns I want.
Just go to Excel and print off a blank Excel page.
Look, you're already using a Microsoft app that comes on your computer. Why not use the one
it's
that's
in there
designed
somewhere.
for?
I trust you. It's in there.
Okay,
but I can usually have it done in about 5 minutes.
Wow.
So
we should have a race one of these days.
Says the guy who doesn't load rifle because it's not worth his time.
Yeah.
I can manual spreadsheets.
That is a very good point.
So I took all my reloading presses home. I can't reload rifle at the office anymore.
Oh, okay.
I used to reload rifle at the office.
Did your chiropractic patients get uncomfortable with
So I have an
explosives?
office that is like 2,500 square feet, and I use about, you've been there, like 800 maybe?
Maybe 1,200.
Okay, so maybe 1,200. So I've got half the office that I don't use for that. So I have a gun room in the office where I've built rifles and I've cleaned rifles and everything you could imagine.
Hypothetically
speaking.
speaking.
I've opened loading ports on shotguns in rooms, hypothetically. And then, I've got a bunch of other rooms. Well, one of the rooms I had, a counter built like this all the way along the wall, and it was 1050 and a 550 and stacks of bullets and primers and powders and everything else. And of course, it's in a locked room with blinds closed. And then, hey, lunchtime hits, I take a 2-hour lunch, I go in there and I crank out some ammo. And like you mentioned with necessity for reloading, that's how I started into reloading. We couldn't find ammo. You're not going to shoot the match.
Yeah.
So it was make a 2.5-hour drive to a bullet manufacturer that's not that far from me, go into their outlet store, buy blims, and hope and pray that they shoot, and then take them home, and then like have to drive 90 minutes north to the only place that had powder that was repackaging powder in like a smaller version of a lunch sack. And then they would staple it shut and write what it was. And you were allowed to buy a single pound. And so that's like when we went to practice, it was like we have a pound of rifle powder and we have a pound of pistol powder each. This is what we're loading up. And once the powder's gone, you're done. And so that's how we had to do things.
I remember when I have had matches that I couldn't shoot because I didn't have components to reload.
Yeah.
And you couldn't find ammo.
No, there was no going anywhere. And then when we were loading pistol, we had loads built up for 115s, 124s, I think 130s because it was an oddball bullet, 135s, 147s, 150s, because what can I buy? And
that's why Mark shoots 300 Wisdom, because nobody ever bought it.
Nobody ever wanted it.
So. They make enough so it has to be on the shelf, and I can always get it.
Always one box at a time.
I'm gonna circle.
Times of struggle wind up creating habits for the future, even when the time of struggle is gone.
I'm circle back here for a second. So you meticulously manage every aspect of your life for efficiency, so you have time left over to hand make spreadsheets.
Yeah, what is it? What are you trying to make time left over?
That's what you're using the time for?
What are you trying to make time left over for?
Okay.
Not necessarily time left over, but usually it's forgetting something. So if for anybody who's shot competition, you know the guy who shows up and he's always forgotten his belt.
If you had
or forgot his holster.
You wouldn't forget it.
If you had a spreadsheet and check boxes on the left side, you'd never forget that stuff. So, but I've had guys that are passing through. Before. Hey, I've had a guy pass through Kansas City.
Just throw the gun down range and go pick it up.
Yeah, calls me at midnight and says, "Can you give me a holster?" I'm like, well, what do you mean? He goes, "Can you give me a holster? I don't have a holster. I'm shooting tomorrow as an RO, and I'm going to be there Saturday and Sunday. He's shooting all day Thursday and Friday. He's got to stop by my house at 1 a.m.
Was this in Tulsa, Oklahoma?
No, this was on to the Missouri match.
In Tulsa, if you remember, and I brought him a holster.
Same person.
Is it? Yeah. He's done that twice.
That guy needs a spreadsheet.
All right.
Hey, super good guy.
Take 10 minutes out of your day and make that guy 2 spreadsheets.
Yeah.
Here, I made this for you. Yeah. There's a little heart on it.
My prep for competition season is a little bit different. So I have kind of not really changed much gear a whole lot over the years. Last year I made some gear changes because I wanted to shoot some different divisions, but I've shot the same shotguns and the same rifle barrel profiles and triggers and everything for a long time, so I haven't changed a lot in that regard. Last year, did a lot of testing with the 1 to 10, so that was a gear change. But typically, I don't start in January and February and be like, oh, what can I build this for this season? I've never really done that. I've made running changes in the middle of the year, which is probably a pretty bad decision because you're not used to it. But my job here kind of allows me to be on the range a lot, and so I get time to practice and time to shoot while we're waiting for stuff to get set up or whatever. And so typically my spool up before the competition season is almost entirely mental and physical. Like, it's getting back on the treadmill. It's I've always found that for me, Dylan and I, I've been in it about 10 years. Dylan's been in it longer than I have. I need to shut off the competition thing in November, and I might shoot a little bit of indoor pistol league, but I typically try and step away, right? I step away for a good 3 or 4 months every year. Like I said, I'll shoot a little bit of indoor pistol in the winter, some PCC stuff. But I mean, for the most part, I have that getaway of hunting season, some ice fishing stuff. And for me, it's because right about now, that March time frame, I'm starting to miss it. I'm starting to miss the shooting. And so it's that kind of renewed passion every spring to get back into it, and that helps you prepare mentally for the season. At least that for me, that's what works. And so right now, I'm going back and reading the books. I'm reading, with winning in mind, reading practical shooting, reading books on the mental preparation and having that mental astuteness and mental strength to push through a match or to push through a weekend of shooting a match. And that excitement gets me down in the basement, digging out all my gear again, cleaning up stuff that needs to get cleaned up, putting fresh Loctite on holster screws, stuff like that. And so that, the gear for me is typically not really what my spool up is like it's almost all entirely mental. Getting back, like getting excited to be back out on the range.
I think there's the excitement part. There's also the confidence part.
Yeah.
Because as somebody who grew up hunting, the most exciting half second of your life is right when you're getting ready to pull the trigger on a nice buck or a turkey or whatever, right? And that's kind of the thing that you're really searching for the next time that you're going to go out hunting. You're like, man, I'm going to have the chance to get a nice buck. It's going to fill the freezer with venison. But like that last half second is where the heart rate comes up. And I know Reuben and I have had a couple conversations in the past about like getting to the end of the season. And you're like, nope, I don't want to go to that match. I'm burnt out. I'm done.
Yep.
I want to be done right now. It's mid-November. I'm tired. I've got Thanksgiving coming up. I've got Christmas coming up. I want to spend time with my family. I got deer season rolling in. So are you going to make the choice to go to opening weekend in deer season and like completely different gun, maybe a gun I wouldn't shoot in competition? Don't care. I just want something different. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, this is a different type of excitement, and I'm actually excited I'm not burnt out. Mm-hmm. And then I take 2-3 months off at times and maybe not touch anything until mid-February.
Well, I mean, at the level that you guys are, I mean, that's a very, like, mentally and physically intense thing to, like, maintain for, like, that long of a period of time. Like, the level that you guys are taking at. You know, I mean, that is a ton of continuous focus, right? And I can see, man, like, you do need some time to decompress,
and
for
I think
sure.
that break time for me is kind of like, Jim, like was it cross country that you did?
Track.
So if you're preparing for a big race, do you go out the day before and run? Like no, that's like you prepare before that, and then the days leading up to that, you're kind of just in your rhythm, right? Like you're not pushing yourself physically. Same with weightlifting. You're not going to go out and do your max the day before you have a competition.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, that mental build-up time before the season, like we're in right now, is I'm starting to pick up my competition guns again. I'm getting stuff all dug out. Took my rifle, my pistol down to the indoor range on Monday of this week, did a little bit of shooting, and it was like I was reminded of the things that I've built over the years. And like it started to come back, and it was like I never left it. I think that anyone who thinks that like I'm going to go shoot a match, I need to go burn 1,000 rounds of ammo today just to get my that's not what you need to do.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
It is. And like you have to trust that if you put in good practice, like Laney Basham always talks about perfect practice. Not practice makes perfect, but perfect practice makes you ready. That type of stuff over time, when you hit that point where now you're needing to compete and you're needing to perform, you just have to trust that the practice you did prepared you. And do it all just as if you were practicing again. Like that way, like if your mental state is that you're not needing to have this end result, it's just that you're just trying to do things right and apply fundamentals, you'll do it every time.
But I think you bring up a really good point there, Reuben, of like when you're talking earlier about like this, like being rejuvenated, like, oh man, I'm ready to get back into it. I'm excited about it. Like you're mentally invested in it again, right? Like you're ready, you're stoked, you're excited, you can't wait, you're looking forward to that match. If you're burnt out, you're not looking forward to it. You're not in that mindset. I would think.
The hunting thing kind of, it's a lot like getting prepared for a hunt. If you go out and we go out and go to the farm and do long-range shooting, and Jim's just absolutely nailing the center of the 700-yard target time and time again, doesn't miss it. And then you go out in the field and you're hunting and you've got this shot at 400 yards and you can't keep your composure because you're like, you apply the now I'm shooting an animal, like all of a sudden it's like, I've done this at twice the distance, but for some reason my adrenaline isn't letting me, like I'm not able to focus. You need to be able to focus so that it's like this shot is the same exact as it's always been in practice, whatever.
Yeah.
But now there's a different end result, and you can't let that shake you while you're trying to perform.
Yep.
And there's a confidence part of like knowing I can do that. So like Garrett and I, we talked about it. So he was doing some training with some guys in Oklahoma. Weekend later, I'm doing some training with some guys in Kansas City, and we go out to the long range area that I've got when the crops are out, and I can push out to 900 yards. I've got steel set to 600. These guys have never shot past 100, 150 yards. So, okay, well, the first thing we're going to do is get down in the most stable position and show them that you can hit there. You can hit. Your gun is capable of it. Let's go through and do that. Then after that, we'll work on positional items as to how to hit from multiple positions. By the time we were done, I had one of the students like, so how else can you shoot this? So I stood up and I shot it offhand at 600, which Garrett and I have both done repeatedly, and it's not that hard once you know the technique to do it. So, hey, we've got an extra 30 minutes. We teach them how to do it. They step up, and all but one of those guys going through the class hit offhand at 600 yards, with one of the students hitting impressive. On the first shot.
Yeah.
And, a first shot hit at 600 yards offhand, you're going like, that's awesome. And the confidence levels for those guys, I'm going through like, okay, we did a 2-day class, $300 a person. Okay, so they're paying a fair amount of money, and I'm going like, man, did we really get enough hours in? And I guess my viewpoint on things is like, I want to make sure those guys got more than what their money was worth. And they get done with it, and they're like, man, I'm really excited about this. This right here alone was worth the money. This right here was worth the trip from here, because not a single one of those people was from Missouri. It was Indiana and Ohio and Colorado, and they were flying in and driving in hours to get there. So, they thought that these 2 or 3 items were worth the class alone. Everything else was gravy on top, which for me was great, but that's the confidence stuff that they have to take home and work on to where when they show up to a match and there's a 600-yard target and their heart rate's going boom, 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 they're like, I know how to do this.
Right.
Yeah.
If they don't go home and practice that and prep for it, guess what?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm looking at the parallels there between, the competition shooting and the hunting, and like, to me at least, the match is like the big buck standing in front of you, and, conversely, same thing, right? Yeah,
it's like the first time I ever shot a deer and the first time I ever shot a deer with a bow. It's like you can see the sight just going nuts. And you're like, okay, calm down. You finally make the shot. And then, of course, if it's like me, I'm 12 years old, you walk up, it's a deer. Like, it wasn't huge, wasn't small, but it was a deer. Like, this is amazing. First time I shot one with a bow, the end of that arrow is doing this. You're like, calm down, stupid. You've done this. You'll be fine. And then, of course, you release it, and I had never shot anything with a bow before, so you're like, man, it ran off. Like, I can't believe I have red arrows. That's stupid. Look at your other arrows and go, oh.
Something happened here.
I got to wait a half hour and find out what's going on.
Yep.
So, a completely different level of excitement. And unfortunately for me, and I don't know if it's the same for Reuben or for Garrett, at this point in time, I don't get that massive adrenaline rush in competition anymore. The adrenaline rush usually comes in where you're going through like, I did that exactly the way I wanted and I planned, and like that right there was exciting. So if I don't get that, like, I'm happy, but if I do get that, that's where the adrenaline rush comes in.
So for me, I'm like Dylan. I don't get nervous anymore before matches. I shot 17 or 18 majors last year, and by the end of the year, I was just like, another match.
Yeah.
Whatever. But for me, where the adrenaline comes in is like at Gen 3 gun with the aerial clay that you have to shoot with a pistol.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many people in the match got it last year, like 6, 7. I was one of them, and it was like, I don't care what else I do the rest of the season. I got that clay. So now in competition to find that adrenaline for me is little things like that. But it actually, honestly, the reason I keep competing, I like to compete, but it's the people.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to change subjects. It's just, the fun really comes in with just hanging out with these guys.
Yeah.
And so we do all this mental prep, but at the end of the day, I'm doing all this prep just so I can go hang out with my friends.
It is. That's
hang
good
out
stuff.
in dirt pits with my friends, just like when I was a kid.
That's good stuff. I don't get nervous before matches either. I've shot 2 of them, and it's just because I know it's not going to go that well. So I just
you're just cold as ice, Jim. I think that like that excitement and adrenaline though, like some of that maybe going away, but I think it's like kind of replaced with other things like you're talking about. That comes with that practice, that familiarity. Like you're not shocked. You're like, my God, I hit it. Like you've kind of moved through those processes. You're familiar. You know not exactly what's going to happen, but you got a darn good idea. And like you said, like that adrenaline rush is coming from like all those things coming together.
Well, and it gets to the point where it's like, okay, so I'm going to shoot the stage, and this is awesome. And I prepared for however many months to shoot this match. But as long as after this stage I can talk trash to Dylan, it was a success.
Doesn't happen often, but every now and then he gets one.
that's big.
And go back to those parallels. Like I can remember the first time I shot at a buck with a rifle, and how maybe uncool, calm, and collected I was versus, nowadays where you're still pumped up, but you're also able to control it at the same time maybe, or manage it, or, kind of process what's going on.
I'm cold as ice, man.
You're used to that stimulus at that point, and it's not as big of an influence on you.
The excitement comes from something else.
Like, one thing I take a lot out of is the preparation, and knowing that, like, if I'm going to pull a trigger on an animal, like, it's because I'm sure that what I'm doing it's going to die, and quickly, and so, like, I don't think you should really, I mean, there's a point where you're learning, I think, where you should be surprised that it was dead at the end of this the ordeal, but it's like, whether it be a target at a match or, like, you shouldn't pull the trigger unless you know where it's going.
Yeah. What I've taken away, biggest thing, is that regardless of whether you're brand new or you've been doing it for a long time, is that if you can talk trash to Dylan afterwards,
definitely
you did a good job.
If you haven't been on the internet lately, then you just go find a ton of it.
Yeah,
because the off season has been more than generous to me, I believe, as far as the trash talking.
Do you remember Jameson's trash talking to Dylan on his very first ever match, at Shooter Source match? Dylan got a Dairy Queen and Jameson finished, and so Jameson made a big deal about the fact that he beat Dylan.
Everybody did at that one.
Good stuff. Man, I'd say how about we haven't done last calls in a while? We'll throw one of those last call rounds out here. I'll kick it off.
Kick it off, Jim.
Competition shooters are nerds.
Yeah.
I'm just going to throw it out there.
Totally.
But I think there's nothing wrong with that. It's just when you actually think about it, the stuff that you're doing, I mean, it reminds me of I don't know, it just reminds me of a lot of the people that you see when they get into race car driving, any kind of racing, any kind of competing, when you have people that are pushing themselves to the absolute limits and trying to squeeze out, more and more and more, and get better and better. You realize they're nerds. Yeah. That's all right. So anyway, I don't know what that last call was really for. If you take anything away, just know that if you are a nerd, it's okay.
I was going to say, being
you're
a nerd is
probably
okay.
really good at something.
You're going to make a lot of money someday.
No, not in this game. Some people that spend a lot of money.
Great way to spend a lot of money.
Okay, it's not a blanket statement. No, I mean, I was going to say the same thing, Jim. I mean,
you were going to say that they're nerds too?
No, it's a similar thing. I wasn't going to insult them.
It's not geek, right?
They're both...
I didn't insult them. I said it's a good thing.
That's true.
Nothing wrong with being a nerd about certain things.
Correct. No, just the depth and to which you guys go into this and the attention to detail is just super cool. I always get so much out of these talks, and I think, other people just can benefit. I mean, a person from the outside that's maybe not diving in that deep can certainly pick up a lot and implement some of those things. And I think whether you're into competition shooting in general, maybe the tactical world, you guys are sorting out a lot of working through the kinks.
Yeah. The only thing I might recommend not taking away is still DIY spreadsheets.
Good Lord.
I'm still question mark on that. Anyway. All right. Rube?
Oh, I think that life gets really busy, and it can be really easy to set the cruise control and say, like, life is happening to me. I'm just here watching it. This is a deep one, right? But for me, competitive shooting has been, not only has it been an outlet that I've been able to, being in sports in younger ages and being a competitive person, it's allowing me an outlet to compete and to constantly push myself mentally and physically to the point where I'm seeing results in things that I do. So whether it be practice with a gun or whether it be the mental preparation for an event, it's always, like I said, life can speed up on you and seem like it's just blowing by. And unless you're paying attention to things in life, you're going to end up someday where you don't realize what happened because everything just happened to you. And like when you apply yourself in life, whether it be in your career, whether it be in a competition, you're the one that's like in control of how you perform. And so for me, it drives me to do better at everything because I'm now competing at mowing my lawn. I'm competing at being a better dad. I'm competing at just, it allows you to, like, I think a lot of people play sports when they're younger, and it's a competitive outlet, and it pushes them to be a better person. And then when you're an adult and you're forced to do adult things, the competition aspect of people's lives goes away. And usually when you see people that are high performing, it's because they have something that they are constantly competing at, whether it be a physical thing like playing in a soccer league, or whether it be, comparing themselves at a match to another person or whatever. Like, I think people that compete are typically ones that don't just let life happen to them. They're attacking it.
Whew.
I like that.
Should write a book.
I've read a book before.
I like that a lot. And I guess in the spirit of that, what's your mow time?
I don't know what that means.
We were
Come on,
talking
man.
about
I mean, how
competing at
fast
mowing
can
the
you mow your
lawn.
lawn?
Mowing. Yeah, I'm pretty quick.
Push mower or riding mower?
Oh, you got it. It's all push.
Okay. I was going to call you an amateur otherwise.
What division is that? That's
That'd be like limited.
That's limited.
Limited.
Well,
For
no,
sure.
no, I'm sorry. Limited would be like the old rotary push mower.
No,
Yep.
that's
No,
like
so
an
it'd be
iron.
like-
So tack ops.
It's like
tack ops would be like a
like tack.
self-assisted push
Yeah,
mower.
open
tack op.
is like the dude on his platform
Bad boy
mower with
buggy.
the C. Yeah, that has
The Z turn.
He's got the Z turn, or what is it? The elliptical handles that they
So
just.
I can do that because
that
at the
NOS?
range I run a zero turn, and at home I do a push mower. So I can do all
Do you even have a
divisions just like
range
there.
lawnmower?
Yeah.
You are a nerd.
So Reuben's nice and deep, like the Grand Canyon and all that good stuff, and I'll be more like a puddle. Chill out and have a little fun. You know, there's kind of the aspect like you talked about. You know, give somebody a hard time, make fun of them. You know, bust their balls, right? You can get your balls busted and still have a smile on your face and laugh and joke with everybody else, and it's a hell of a lot more fun. And like, you know, Reuben and I have been at matches where it's like, all right, so how do we screw with this guy, or how do we screw with that guy? And then you hope they're going to take it right, because if they're not, you're going to give it to them 3 times harder until they start to. And so we've done that.
Yeah.
And most of them end up receiving it really, really well. And that's kind of the cool thing, like what Garrett said about the community and the people that you hang out with. If you can do that and you can be a little lighthearted and just have some fun, not take everything so serious, it's going to be a lot more enjoyable time, because at the end of the ride, we all die. Enjoy the time until you get there. Right? So I've got 3 kids, I got a wife, I got everything wonderful at home. I got a job that I love. I've never worked a day in my life. And then I turn around and I get to go play. So you're probably not going to see me upset for more than about 30 seconds on the range. You know,
I've seen
even
that, though.
So much for not going deep.
Yeah.
it's not that deep.
Well, you
Foot wet.
you waded in.
Waded in,
For
yeah.
Dylan, that's pretty deep.
Yeah. That's about as deep as it gets for me.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff.
Good job.
It takes.
Couldn't even see that he was reading it off a piece of paper.
On paper is on my hand.
I gotta say, busting people's balls at the range and not knowing how they're gonna accept it when there's all those guns around is first
so the
is
trick
kind of a
is-
bold move.
They have to set the gun down first.
Okay, got
Wait
it.
till it's unloaded and clear and back in the holster.
Then proceed.
It's all about procedure.
Plan on
Okay.
sucking
Yeah.
that bad?
The
To
most
lay
dangerous
waste.
one was when Freilich was making ready at the Tri-Gun one year and holding up a quiet please sign while he's making ready after his little podcast appearance after World Shoot. That was probably
We thought Dylan was going to get shot.
I was about the only thing was, it would have been bird shot, so I might have been okay.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe.
So final thoughts for me. So my journey through competition has been kind of interesting. So the reason I did it at first and what I focused on at first is totally different than it is now. And I didn't even talk about this earlier in the podcast. So when I got into competitions, right after I got back from Afghanistan, the person who got me into competition shooting, and I shot a couple matches with him before we deployed, ended up getting killed over there. And so when I got back, I started just to kind of honor him and to kind of give me something to focus on. Because as a infantryman, as a military sniper, we've got this focus and very goal oriented, and I didn't have any goals when I got home. So I was like, I'm gonna get good at competition shooting because it's a discipline I enjoy, it's a discipline I understand. So when I first got back, that was kind of my focus, was I want to get really good at it, and I'm super competitive because I'm an A-type personality, and I'm there to win. And over the years, I've gotten older. I've calmed down a little bit. My focus now, so I talked about all my lists and everything. There's one thing that's always the number one thing on the list, and I didn't even mention this earlier, have more fun. So how can I have more fun? Okay, I'm going to shoot more matches that I know my friends are going to be at. I'm going to be a little more selective of the matches because maybe I know people that are shooting there and they're people I like to shoot with. So now what shooting is for me is a chance to hang out with friends and become a better person. It's like Reuben touched on that as a a competitive person, that drive carries over into other aspects of life. You know, your drive to succeed. But so for me now, you know, what I take from competition is friendships and how do I be a better person. You know, and if I, you know, shoot well, that's just icing on the cake.
What was your number 2 goal?
What?
What was your number 2 goal? You said number 1's always the same.
I'm confused.
This is what you said you were going to have as a goal last time we were on the podcast.
Oh, no, that wasn't on this podcast. That was a different podcast.
Okay.
So what's your number 2 goal right now?
Okay, so...
Way to go,
So
Dylan.
I put out... No, that's fine. No, I get who's picking... I had a goal. I made a national announcement in 2018 that I was going to beat Dylan in a major match in 2019. and I literally, like, Wisconsin 3-gun championship, 1 target away. I mean, he beat me by like 0.3 of a point.
Yeah,
I was so
it was close.
It was close. The good news is yesterday when we were at the range here and we did the little red dot pistol challenge, I totally beat Dylan.
Yeah, he did get me there. I figured out what the problem was, though. So Garrett's kryptonite is a shot timer.
Yeah. I mean,
okay, the little beep.
Yep.
I wouldn't call that kryptonite. Yeah, pretty much kryptonite.
And that's why you bust your friend's balls.
Apparently,
Yep.
Dylan's is a freaking razor.
Not going to happen.
Oh, yeah, dude. Rocking the locks.
Looking good.
Actually got it cleaned up before coming up here. I was expecting Reuben to have a little more hair, but apparently not.
Only a short while ago, he did have quite a bit. Excellent. All right. Well, good stuff. Thank you guys very much for joining us. Always good to have visitors in from out of town. And to everybody listening out there, let us know what you think. And, I don't know, future other ideas for other topics similar to these ones. We covered a lot. Went from reloading to competitive lawn mowing and the fact that we're all going to die. And that Garrett beat Dylan. So, good stuff. We'll catch everybody next time. Happy hunting and shooting out there. Bye.
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 All right, that'll wrap it up for this episode of the Vortex Nation podcast. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Hit that subscribe button so you can always stay up to date on the latest happenings over here at the Vortex Nation podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram at Vortex Nation Podcast. Again, everybody, thanks, and happy hunting and shooting. We appreciate it. Have a good one.